Connected Homeschooling, Episode 10.
Welcome to the Connected Homeschooling Podcast, where we connect homeschooling families like yours with leaders, authors, speakers, and all-around interesting people who provide great conversations, tips, and advice. Now here's your host, Devin Dabney.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for Episode 10 of the Connected Homeschooling Podcast. This week, for the very first time, my guests are actually a married couple, Jim and PJ Jonas from goatmilkstuff.com. They operate their successful business along with their 8 children that they homeschool. In this interview, we talk about their homeschooling journey, their business, and also some of their techniques such as the youngest person rule. It was a very exciting time with Jim and PJ, so stay tuned for that interview. Okay, my guest today on the Connected Homeschooling Podcast is Jim and PJ Jonas from Indiana, and they're the owners of Goat Milk Stuff, which you can check out at goatmilkstuff.com. And they're doing a lot of things. They're blogging, podcasting, and doing so much more. So actually, I'll let Jim and PJ tell us a little bit more about themselves.
Well, we are Jim and PJ, like you said. We have 8 children that we homeschool. About 5 years ago, we started selling the goat milk soap that I had made for the family. I made it really just to have a natural alternative for our children, and when I put it in the shower, my husband's fingers stopped cracking and splitting. So that was when I kind of realized I had a good product, and so we started selling it, and within a year of starting the business, Jim was on full-time. We've since built a new production facility and moved to a new farm that has 36 acres, and we just keep growing. And, you know, we really involve the children in the business. That's what is kind of the foundation for our homeschool.
Wow, that's great. And that's one of the things that I've heard as well from different people that have shared your story or some of the different places online. And as I mentioned in the pre-show that my buddy Jackie Bledsoe had great things to say about your family and how you incorporate the kids, and it was definitely inspiring to him as well. So thanks for sharing about that. As a way to encourage our guests and the different listeners to the show, we like to start off with a quote or a scripture that can be encouraging to the listeners. So why don't you guys take it away with an inspirational quote. Maybe, Jim, if you want to share that.
Yeah, I got it right here, Devin. The quote that we've really used as a foundation for our family is 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 11 and 12, which says, "Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and attend to your own business and work with your hands, just as we commanded you, so that you will behave properly toward outsiders and not be in any need." For a family that has been on a couple of national television shows and featured in Oprah's magazine, it may not seem like we are making it our ambition to lead a quiet life, but we really do. And here on the farm, that's kind of what we do. We lead a quiet life and we work with our hands.
Yeah, and the children are all taught that. You know, it's about working hard, serving others, doing what you do with all your might, and that's what's kind of foundational to how we live.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about your homeschooling experience. For many of my guests, homeschooling is something that is new to their family. It wasn't something that was passed down to them from their parents. So how did you actually get into homeschooling?
Well, Jim and I kind of have a lot of confidence that there's pretty much nothing that we can't do if we put our minds to it. So when it came time to figure out how we were going to educate the children, it was kind of a no-brainer that we could do it. And part of that reason is Jim was a junior high science teacher. He taught for 7 years, and he saw a lot of the intrinsic problems with the public school system. I tutored math for about 15 years, so I saw what a lot of the problems with that coming out. And we knew that by treating our children as individuals, that we were going to be able to develop their strengths, minimize their weaknesses, and really just bring about the best education for them each individually as possible.
Okay. Now, in terms of the, I guess some of the logistics of homeschooling, is there any particular curriculum you use or some of the different resources that are out there?
No, we pretty much do it all ourselves.
We have used some curricula in the past. We've used Switch on Schoolhouse, computer-based program. We used Sunlight for a little while. But at this point, we're very much doing our own business-based curriculum, kind of focused on goat milk stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we really want the children to be able to run their own businesses someday, to have the confidence, the ability. You know, we're not unschoolers. We definitely have a plan and a focus and a goal, but it's not traditional schooling. It's dealing with the things that are practical, and you know, they do so much with the business that they would normally cover in their school, and if they were in public school, things like all their math. You know, my kids know Excel spreadsheets from about the time they're 6 years old. They're dealing with Excel spreadsheets and playing with that, and you know, all their public speaking with customers and answering customer questions and going to craft fairs and speaking out at those different things. So, and giving tours, which is what your buddy Jackie was. My 12-year-old Fletcher is in charge of all the tours, so he's learning how to communicate and deal with people that way. So everything that kind of arises in the business, we don't just make the decisions, Jim and I. We bring the whole family in, we explain everything that's going on, and we have them help us to make decisions.
That's great. You guys are some of my heroes with that.
We also, Devin, we do a lot with web-based curriculum, and that we kind of develop on our own, in that each of our children has to have their own blog, and that's going to be something before they can graduate, they have to have a successful website of their own. And so it's really important to us that they're not just learning, you know, the 3 R's, so to speak, but that they're also doing so in a way that will interface with modern technology and the way that social is going these days.
Yeah, one of our employees, my 7-year-old daughter Indigo, said to her this morning, well, your mom might be stopping by today. And she goes, well, how did you know that? And she said, oh, well, I talked to her on Google. So, you know, they're getting very, very savvy with how to use the internet in a way that benefits them and is useful.
Yeah, I think that's necessary, especially in this day and age. If you're not really connected online and finding out how to get to the resources and the people that you need, it puts you at a disadvantage. So I commend you on doing that with the kids, especially at a young age.
Well, and I say all the time that I don't spend a lot of my time dealing with things that I grew up learning. So, for example, I don't spend a lot of time with my children on spelling. Okay, we are avid readers. We read all the time. I'm always putting good books in front of them. But where I focus my time with them is homonyms. I want them to know the difference between there, and there. I want them to know the things that spell check isn't going to get. What's the difference between accept and except? So we spend a lot of the time there and not necessarily focusing on all the spelling families and learning how to spell all of those things.
It's interesting that you said that because my wife and some different people were passing around this link for a grammar test yesterday, and so many people were doing that on Facebook yesterday, and fortunately I got 97% on it. So.
Good for you. Yeah, we're kind of grammar police around here. We're always correcting people.
Yeah, so I mean, that's great that you focus on what's important to you, and that really is. You learn some of the other things as far as the spelling and all that just by being around and being in the environment. When you see some invoices and spreadsheets and different things, you're going to learn something. So that's great. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there have been some new studies that have been coming out lately that are showing that, particularly for children, but for adults as well, the way that they are capable of remembering things is they have to actually anchor that piece of knowledge that they're learning with a memory in their brain. And so that's why a lot of kids can, cram for a test, study it, and do okay on the test, and then forget it later on because they've got nothing to anchor it to. So with everything that we do, there is something hands-on that the children are learning, that the children are doing, and they tend to not forget it. Their retention rates are very, very high.
Yeah, I think that's definitely equipping them for the near future and then the far off future when they may be on their own. So great job on that. Now let's talk about some of the difficulties, if you've had any. I know that whenever I ask people, well, what are some of the challenges you've had with homeschools, or have you had any, they're like, of course we've had our challenges. So talk a little bit about that. Jim, you want to handle some of that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We've always lived a charmed life, Devin. We have very few difficulties. A lot of that, I think, is the two of us work very well together. It's a very complementary relationship. Wherever one of us has a difficulty, the other one is able to step right in, and that's very dynamic as well. And by God's grace, the two of us have just really been able to help each other through any difficulties we've had. And we were racking our brains ahead of time, thinking about some sort of challenges to share. And outside of the usual challenges that most homeschoolers run across, and that's mostly just dealing with folks that don't get homeschooling and trying to explain it to them, we haven't really had any problems.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is with the children, there are 8 children, the 2 of us, we have employees, we are all, because we homeschool, because we work from home, we are here on top of each other all the time. And fortunately, the kids are generally each other's best friends, but being so close, that can cause some tension, and we try and turn that then into a learning opportunity where instead of just letting them battle it out, okay, there are always going to be problem children, or not problem children, but people who cause problems in your life. How are you going to learn how to handle that? Are you going to learn to be able to reconcile with them? Are you going to learn to be able to ignore it and just move on? So those are probably some things that, we've had to deal with, but we've been able to just further their learning through them.
Okay. Now, what about the question of socialization? That usually comes up when you talk about homeschooling. How do you even address that?
We don't. With 8 children from ages 16 on down to 6, they've got siblings that are always about a year and a half away from them, and because of various differences in maturity levels and things like that, they always have a peer nearby. So they're always being socialized that way. And at the same time, we have been so much interacting with customers all the time, whether it's on the phone or writing letters, notes on the invoices and things like that. And we're out in the community a lot too. So really, socialization is really not even something that crosses our minds. Yeah. And anybody who meets our children, it doesn't cross their minds either.
Yeah, I mean, socialization is only an issue if you have a single child and you're home all day and you don't go out, you never go food shopping, you never go to the post office, you never ever see another adult. Yeah. And, it's just not the way most people live nowadays. People are out in the community, they're out doing things, and teaching your children how to, we don't teach our children not to talk to strangers. We teach our children how to appropriately talk to strangers. And, I think that's kind of a big difference in how we handle that. They're always talking to people.
Okay, well, talking about interacting with your customers and being out in the community and doing different things, I know that you keep really busy with the business. Do you do any other activities like co-ops or any type of sports or anything like that?
We don't do any homeschool co-ops or homeschool groups, mostly because, like you said, time is just at a minimum, and I'm very protective of our time. I don't overschedule us. I make sure that we have downtime for the children just to be free and go play in the woods and and run around down by the creek and whatnot. The boys have done different sports in the past. They did wrestling for many years. Right now, all of the children are running track and cross country, so that's something that we can do as a family. We can take them all, and they all can go run, and then they all can go home. So there's usually something like that we're doing.
Okay. Now let's change gears here a little bit, and we're going to shift from homeschooling to your business, which I guess in many senses is not really changing gears. We're still talking the same thing. But I guess walk us through how goat milk stuff came about. How did you think about the name, and just whatever you want to share about the business?
Well, basically, I had all the children in the bathtub one day, and I think there were 6 of them at the time, and I was just letting them splash around and play in the tub, and I picked up the baby wash that I had always used and looked at the ingredients, and I couldn't believe that, this is what I thought was great for my kids' skin was full of petroleum-based chemicals and all these chemicals that I couldn't pronounce, and I decided right there that I was going to make my own soap. And so we already had the dairy goats, and I knew that goat milk wasn't just good to drink, but that it's really good for your skin because it has things like vitamin A and selenium and the alpha hydroxy acids, which are all things they add to high-end beauty products. All that stuff occurs naturally in the goat milk. So I did a whole bunch of research, took me a very long time, and started making soap. And like I mentioned earlier, when I put it in the shower, Jim's finger stopped cracking and splitting. So that was when I was like, okay, we've got something. But we weren't done having kids yet, and so we kind of put it off a little bit until the last baby was born. And then we started selling the soap at craft fairs, and that was a wonderful experience for us because they're exhausting. Taking your kids and dragging 8 kids across, around different states is very tiring, and then having to go home and milk goats. But we spoke, face to face with customers and got to hear direct feedback, and we learned a lot that way. But our goal was always to drive people to the website. So we came up with goatmilkstuff.com just because we wanted to do a bunch of different products with goat milk. Right now it's still in the bath and body stages, but our hopes are that at some point we're going to start making goat milk fudge and perhaps goat milk cheese and cajeta, which is like a caramel sauce made with goat milk that's really, really good.
Very, very good.
Yeah, it's very good. We just had some last night with apple crisp and vanilla ice cream, and it was so yummy.
Oh man, I'm getting hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't have any problem getting people to try that because it's very decadent. But so it was just a matter of once the website was up, everybody kind of fell into their roles. I have a rule in my house. I call it my youngest person rule, and what that means is that the youngest person capable of doing a job does it. So if you give the youngest person the job, then everybody else is able to do more because they're not doing little jobs. So we're able to accomplish a lot just because everybody is doing something.
Now, that's the first time I've heard of this youngest person rule. I think I might have to implement that. I've got a 13 or 14-month-old. We'll see what we can find for him to do around the house.
Well, yeah, because with your large family, that's important. You got a lot of hands there, and you got a lot of work to do around the house. And when you can free up the oldest ones to tackle more things that you and your wife are stuck doing, then it just makes everybody more productive, and you get a lot more done.
And honestly, what ends up happening is the children all know that's the rule. They know the youngest person capable of doing it is the one who does it. And so they love training their younger siblings on their chores because they know the minute they're proficient at it, they're going to pass it down. And usually the younger ones are really excited to try something new. It's not until it becomes their job that they get kind of tired of it. So it works really well.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I know that you guys went through a change in location, and I know it started off kind of small scale, and now it's pretty big. Walk us through, I guess, some of the process and the growth of the company.
Well, we started out at Charlestown, Indiana, with our 3 acres and a handful of goats, and through the process of doing a lot of craft shows and really working hard on the internet, we were able to grow the business to the point where we were getting squeezed out of that area very quickly. We were able to find this new property up here, which is about 36 acres, and we're in Scottsburg, Indiana now. And so the goats have a lot more room. We built a building to make the soap in. We got a barn for the goats. We've got another little barn for the bucks and the chickens and the rabbits, and we've got our house here, so we're pretty well set up here now. But it was quite a process, about 2 years to move everybody and everything up here, and we're finally planted and putting in some solid roots.
Yeah, I was really surprised by how difficult it was to expand. I kind of thought, when you find the property, you put an offer in, and we were going to be up and running within 6 months. And the fact that it took 2 years and all the the headache and the just everything, the red tape, and you have to go to this meeting and that meeting. I had no idea the complexity that was involved in starting an enterprise, and it's kind of disheartening a little bit. I mean, I understand why they do it, to try and keep people on doing good things and doing things the right way, but when that's just naturally the way you do it, of course of course we're going to do it the right way and do good things. It's kind of frustrating to have to just be delayed after delay after delay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you said it took about a year for Jim to come on full time.
Yeah, I was able to cut back my hours gradually, which was fantastic. The guy I was working with was very understanding and very encouraging of us starting the business. So that was fantastic because I was able to just work little by little more on the soap business, and then I was able to come on full time.
Yeah, what pretty much happened was it got to the point where the children and I were having a very hard time keeping up, and Jim was helping, but he only had so many hours at home to help. So we kind of sat down and had a big family meeting and said that we have to make a decision. We have to either scale back the business, or we're going to have to take a big leap of faith and bring Jim on full time. And like you said, he was able to cut back slowly, but at one point we just had to go for it. And that was probably one of the scariest times of all, because the business was doing really well and the business was growing, but at that point it was not making enough to support us. So it was a very big leap of faith. Our whole lives we'd always had a paycheck to rely on, and if you show up on time you're going to get paid, and I think just being fully responsible for everything was very scary for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so was this your first venture, I guess, into the business world, entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, we had never jumped out on faith like that before in terms of business, so it was
totally new.
Yeah.
And I actually I learned about you guys from Cliff Ravenscraft. I listened to podcast Answer Man, and he was just talking about this family, and they had 8 kids, and at the time I think I may have had 3 or 4, and I'm like, man, they got a lot of kids. And, and of course now we're looking at number 6, so it's not that far off. But
no.
You got a lot of kids.
Yeah, and so I'm used to all of the different things, but I just saw his admiration of you as a couple, and PJ, you just, I guess, doing some of the things with the business and the homeschooling and just the different elements that you had going on, or you still have going on, just an inspiration to a lot of different people. So I just wanted to bring you on here to find out more, give you an opportunity to share what you're doing, and what we're going to do in this last segment. And actually before that, you're doing more, PJ, you do a podcast as well, that's correct?
Correct. I have a podcast I call The Busy Mom Survival Guide.
Okay, and I'm not a busy mom, but of course I've listened to a few episodes and enjoyed myself, and so you may have a guy every now and then listening.
Yeah,
in.
we have several busy dads out there that are listening and getting some advice as well.
Okay, yeah, she'll have me guest podcast with her. We did a 4-part homeschool series, actually, where the two of us just sat down and talked for quite a bit about what we do in homeschooling, and there were lots of dads that listened to that as well.
Okay, and we'll link up to that in the show notes for this episode. This is going to be, I think, episode 10 of my podcast, so I'm excited. This 10 straight weeks I've been doing it, so I'm excited about that, just sharing what people are doing that is exciting, encouraging, inspiring to other people. And what we'll do in this last segment is it's called 7 with Devin. I'm going to ask 7 questions, and you just give me your best answers, and I'll share them out with the audience.
All right, we're ready.
Okay, well, the first 2 I like to group together. The first one is, what's your top free resource that you recommend? This could be something like a software program like Evernote or something to help you with productivity. And then the second one is, what is your top paid resource that you recommend?
I said that the top free resource is absolutely PJ's podcast. That's the Busy Mom Survival Guide, and
Okay.
no doubt about it, that is a fantastic resource for people, whether they're homeschooling or not. It's a great way to get some great tips.
Okay.
And the top paid resource that we have is Bluehost. And
Okay.
Bluehost is our web hosting. Well, you can tell them more about that.
Yeah, it's the one I use for all the children's blogs. So, like Jim mentioned earlier, all of our children have to have their own blog that they do, and you can just have one Bluehost account and host an unlimited number of blogs. Well, I suppose there's a limit at some point, but we haven't hit that yet. And that's been something that the children learning how to set up and manage their own WordPress blog has been it's been very time consuming for us because there's a lot of nuances to it, but they're starting to get really comfortable with it.
Yeah, because really we're not only teaching them how to learn, but we're also teaching them how to communicate. Yeah. And a blog is a big part of that.
Yeah, I tell my oldest son, he likes to sound like an encyclopedia. He likes to just the facts and no emotion. I said, okay, well, it's your information there is good, but you gotta, how did you feel about that? And is there anything that you've learned from that? And so it's fun watching the different personalities and how they express themselves on their blogs.
Yeah, and it's actually teaching them some skills that they can use in the future. As adults, I know actually knowing how to do a WordPress site has gotten me out of some difficult situations. I even had the air conditioner go out on my van, and I didn't have the money to fix it, and then I realized that the auto shop didn't have a website, and so I actually bartered and got my air conditioner fixed.
That's awesome. Good for you.
And I've actually had body work done, and I've gotten dental work done and all kind of things as a result of just helping people out with WordPress. So that's something that all of you kids would be able to do in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, the next thing is for them to learn Photoshop. That'll be once they're comfortable with WordPress and their blogs, that'll be something they'll start getting some experience with that.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the other questions. Think about when you first started homeschooling, what would be the first thing you would do if you had an opportunity to start over?
We have, the whole time we have homeschooled, we are constantly changing. Okay, we're constantly adapting. Our lives are so variable and change from one moment to the next that the biggest thing I think I probably would have done differently is to not have assumed that when I found something I was going to stay with it for more than 6 months, that it was going to be good for right now, it's going to be good for the next 6 months, but you don't have to hang on to it that because the kids change, they grow, our lives change, and just be willing to be flexible and be adaptable. And then the other thing is not to rely on curriculum, because I think when you're starting out, it's so easy to say, oh, if I just find the perfect curriculum, my homeschooling will be easy and be a breeze. And that is, in my experience, as far from the truth as possible. That's curriculums, they have their place, but for many people, they've become a crutch. And we want our children to be able to handle themselves and be capable in the real world, and that's hard to do with just a curriculum.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, this is a question for both of you, and I guess give it some thought. What would be your best advice, Jim, for homeschooling dads? Some of us who may not be as involved in the educational process, but we're the dad, we're supporting mom, we're supporting the kids and the family. What's your advice? And then, PJ, what's your advice for maybe a new homeschool mom? Sure.
The role of dad frequently in homeschooling is he's the quality assurance manager. He's making sure that everything is getting done and that there aren't any gaps, right? Oh goodness, no, not the homeschool gap. Oh dear. And my advice for dads is don't worry about the gaps because, and I'm sure PJ will echo this. The goal here is not to teach every bit of information that's out there. The goal is to train our children how to think. Mm-hmm. And because we've got them for, 18 years, give or take, they're not going to learn everything they need to know in those 18 years.
Yeah.
But they need to know how to learn the things they need to know. And that's where we need to teach them. So dads, don't freak out about all those, I can't believe it. I saw him sign his name the other day. I can't even read it, whatever, okay? That's not a big deal. Teach your kids how to think, and that's what's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and I have two things. The first one is to, what Jim said, teach them to think, but make sure that they love learning. Don't make homeschooling this chore that is a source of fighting between mom and child. Learning should be exciting. Learning should be fun. If your kids are not having fun learning things, then this is kind of harsh, but in my opinion, you're doing something wrong, because it should be something new. Their eyes should light up when they find something new. And I hate workbooks. I think they're the most boring, silly things ever. And my kids, if I would put one in front of them, their eyes would cross. But math is everywhere. And if you can go out, when's the last time you had your kids, build something and deal and measure the angles outside? That's something that makes it fun. So number one, make it fun. Number two is moms have to be so careful of over-committing and over-scheduling, because we want to give our children the best of everything. We want to expose them to everything. We want to, just make sure that they can be everything they can be. And while that's a good goal, it comes at a sacrifice. And the sacrifice is free time. And I think your children are so much more benefited by having free time where they can learn to express their creativity and just have time to think and come to grips with the world around them, that you need to make sure you're saying no to some events and making sure that you're not overcommitted and the family isn't overstressed because of that.
Great advice. Let's talk about, I guess, some of the rewards and then some of the challenges with homeschooling. I know you mentioned you didn't really have a whole lot of challenges, but maybe talk about some of the rewards that you've experienced as a result of homeschooling.
Well, I had one. We had a certain situation with another teenager outside of our family, and Jim and I were counseling this person, and my daughter, who's 16, turned to us and she said, "Hey, Mom," she said, "you know how you and Dad are talking with so-and-so?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You know how most teenagers think that their parents are kind of stupid?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I've been watching what you're telling this person, and you and Dad are both really smart."
Wow.
Yeah, and that was, I just gave her a big hug and said that was one of the best things she ever could have said to me. And, that isn't something that came because we're teaching her fractions and teaching her multiplication, but it is something that comes because we spend time with her because we're homeschooling. So, as much as it's important for them to learn facts, I consider myself a success when we have those kind of relationship moments, and that's what I strive for.
I know you mentioned about, I guess, some of the challenges. Have you faced challenges with the different ages, I guess, or not really many issues with that?
Well, we have one child who has speech issues. He works with a speech therapist,
Okay.
and because of that, he is having trouble learning to read.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to reading, I don't believe that all kids learn to read at the same age. I don't think that everybody learns at 4 or 5, and so I am very content to let him learn to read when he's ready to learn to read. But it's something that we have to be very careful, because outside pressure can make him feel like he's, not intelligent, or, grandma saying, "Well, why can't he read yet?" And, the child hears that, and he knows that other people have that expectation. So that's probably been, and honestly, I guess that, now that I mentioned that, is probably been our biggest challenge, because for the longest time, I thought we were going to be able to correct his speech issues. And I thought we were going to be able to handle them on our own, or he was going to just outgrow them, and it wasn't happening, so then having to locate a speech therapist and find someone he could work with, and that took a lot of effort, because we didn't go to the local school system, so it was a matter of finding somebody privately. And so that, other kids we've been able to help them properly say their L's and their R's. But with this one, there were just so many issues that, he's been working probably going on 2 years now. So just to give you an idea, that's probably been our biggest challenge, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree not to mention it.
Okay, and it definitely seems like you speak from experience, and that confidence that you have is infectious. I think that you know what you're doing, and it just shows. And I think a lot of people can relax. Sometimes, like you said, it's really the outside pressure that causes a lot of the issues for us, and we get to comparing each other and looking at, all right, what did this child do? And the truth of it is we all learn, even as adults, at different speeds and different ways. We have different styles. We like some people auditory, some wanting to read. And, so I guess that's really encouraging that you could be so confident and just know that it'll be all right. So
one thing I always encourage new homeschooling moms to do is to kind of sit with a blank piece of paper and write down, portray yourself 18 years into the future and say, my child is going to be successful if, and start filling in those blanks. And when I did that for myself years and years and years ago, very little of it had anything to do with straight academics. They weren't going to be successful if they knew the dates of the major Civil War battles. They were going to be successful if they were happily married, if they loved their siblings, if they knew how to work hard. It was all of those kind of character traits and relationship things. I keep saying relationships, but that's what's important. That's what you come out knowing. I mean, ask how many people can still remember the Civil War battles, and I dare say, except for most history majors, very few of them can. And we've got Google, so you can always look that up.
That's true. Well, let's end this segment on a light note. What's a unique characteristic or talent that you have most people don't know?
My superpower is fitting product into the shipping boxes.
Yeah.
Whenever people order just enough stuff to fill a box and nobody else can get it into the box, I can get it in there. That's my superpower.
Yeah, he's really good. You mentioned auditory and different learners. He's definitely a spatial learning style. Yeah.
I hear that's an acquired skill. I actually know a guy who has someone next to him in a business. It's a shipping business, and you'd be surprised the way they can fit so many things into a package.
Yeah, I definitely have not acquired that skill. I'll try it for 5 minutes and finally give up and get him, and he's got it within 10 seconds.
Well, what about you, PJ? You have any unique talents?
Oh, gosh, I don't even know. That people don't know. I tell everybody everything.
Yeah, she's pretty wide open about everything.
I'm an ocean girl. I grew up on an island. I love the ocean, but that's not really a talent.
Well, that's a unique characteristic. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that I'm in the Midwest. I don't really know how I ended up in the Midwest, but yeah, I grew up on an island. So
okay.
It's the only thing that comes to mind.
She's got some pretty good body surfing skills.
Yeah.
We have to get it on video and check that out.
Yeah. Jim knows that every year he's got to get me to the ocean, or he's got a very grumpy wife if I don't get down there and get some saltwater time.
Yep.
Well, what we'll do is the last thing is share with our audience the best way to connect with you, and also you have a resource this week, which is your newsletter. And just tell us briefly about the newsletter and then the best ways we can get in touch with you.
Sure. Our newsletter is just a way that people can find out more about us every month. We always send out a discount or a special along with details of what's going on here on the farm and any new products we'll be rolling out, things like that. It's a great way for people to keep in touch with us. And people can subscribe to that with their email, and that'll show up just around the first of the month right in their email box.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the newsletter, and we always put pictures in there. People always love watching the pictures, especially when the baby goats start being born, and we're always putting in the new baby goat pictures and stuff like that. But we are all over the social media, and most of the stuff is at Goat Milk Stuff, so it's facebook.com/Goat Milk Stuff, and my Twitter is Goat Milk Stuff, and Jim's is Goat Milk Jim, and
got Pinterest and Google+.
Yeah. And then the website, obviously, is just www.goatmilkstuff.com.
And recently, we've just been releasing a lot of YouTube videos as well, so that's a great way for folks to find out more about what's going on here.
Okay, well, I'm going to link up to all of that in the show notes, and we're actually a part of a food co-op, and some of the people that participate with us actually have goats, and so I'm going to pass on the word to them to make sure they listen to this interview, and some of them homeschool as well. So I appreciate having you guys both on the podcast. You're my first couple ever on the podcast, so I really appreciate your time, and just thank you so much for being on the show.
We're happy to be here, Devin.
Thanks for having us.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jim and PJ Jonas. They're really some down-to-earth people that I've come to respect and admire, and I hope during the course of the interview that you gain some valuable insight and some tips that you can possibly implement in your own day-to-day operations with homeschooling or even in your family. If you'd like to reach out to them, go to goatmilkstuff.com and be sure to sign up for their newsletter so you can stay abreast of the things that they have going on. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, feel free to go to the show notes at connectedhomeschooling.com/episode 10. And just leave any questions there or any comments, and we'll be sure to address those. If you'd like to connect with us on Facebook or Twitter, simply search for Connected Homeschooling and we'll be able to connect in the social media world. And I'd love to hear from you. Any feedback that you have about the show, the guests that we've had, or any guests that you think we should have on the show, please feel free to reach out to me on connectedhomeschooling.com or on social media. Next week, we're going to have a guest from the iHomeschool Network. Jimmy Landley is going to be here, and she's going to give some talk from the perspective of a homeschooling mom who has an only child. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to us and connect. Tune in next week for some more encouragement, inspiration, and education. God bless you.